Good day. My name is Jermaine Mop, and welcome to the first episode of All Things Labor-Rated. I am so excited about this feature that I'm going to present to you guys. And today we will be talking about the national minimum wage, and I'm also going to go into detail as to how you're going to protect yourself as an employee and how you should exercise your rights when it comes to you in the workplace. Now today we're going to be speaking about the national minimum wage that was introduced on the 1st of January 2019, and also the reason why it was implemented was for the fact that to just alleviate some of the huge wage disparities that has been taking place in our country, and the national minimum wage is there to address those challenges. Now the national minimum wage is set at 20 Rand per hour, and there's about 7 million people that is currently earning less than 20 Rand an hour at the moment. And also what is nice about the national minimum wage is that this act supersedes all collective agreements and it supersedes all contract of employment that you have entered into between yourself and the employer. Now, a worker is any person who works for another, who receives or is entitled to receive any payments for that work, whether in money or in kind. Now, the Act deliberately uses the word worker instead of employee. The word worker is more inclusive in order for people to exercise and benefit from this beautiful crafted piece of legislation. And other labor laws use the word employee. So like I said before, the national minimum rate is set at 20 Rand per hour, and it cannot be altered by a separate agreement that you and your employer has now entered into. For example, now you have an agreement with the two of you and say, look, I'm going to work for you, I'm going to give you this amount of money, and now you saying, yes, I agree with that. That is not allowed in the Act. Also, another important thing to remember is that the national minimum wage has no retrospective effect. Now what that means is you cannot go back from the 1st of January 2019 when this law came into effect. It only stops there. That is what it meant by the retrospective effect. Now there's a couple of exclusions from this act, and there's 3 in particular, and those are the only ones that are allowed to earn less than 20 Rand an hour, and it goes as follows. The farm workers is set at 18 Rand an hour. Domestic workers are set at the minimum rate of 15 Rand an hour, and the extended public works programs are set at the minimum rate of 11 Rand an hour. Now these 3 categories form part is what is known as the sectoral determination, and a sectoral determination is something where the Department of Labour has identified as problematic areas, of which now they had set a national minimum, in fact a minimum wage category. Now that's the reason for the national minimum wage. It's in an effort to eradicate the sectoral determination and just bring in one national minimum wage that cuts across all sectors. Now we're going to talk about forms of payments that are excluded. Now in terms of Section 5 of the National Minimum Wage Act, despite any contract or collective agreement or law to the contrary, the calculation of a wage for the purposes of this act is the amount payable in money for ordinary hours of work, and that now is excluding any payment to enable a worker to work, including any transport, equipment, tools, food or accommodation allowances, and then also any payment in kind, including boarding and lodging. And then also there's gratuities, including bonuses and tips for those that are working, maybe an example for like a waitress. And then any prescribed category of payment, just to put that categorically clear that there's those things that are excluded. Now, as I said before, the purpose of this act is to advance economic development and social justice, and that is now like improving the wages of the lowest paid worker, and then also protecting workers from unreasonably low wages, and then preserving the value of the national minimum wage, and also promote stuff like collective bargaining, support economic policy, and reducing wage inequality. Now I'm just going to read you a paragraph from the National Minimum Wage Act that I think is critically important, with regards to the reduced working hours that employees somehow now do to avoid paying this 20 an hour. And then section 4 subsection 6 of the National Minimum Wage Act states that it is an unfair labor practice for an employer to unilaterally alter wages, hours of work, or other conditions of employment in connection with the implementation of this act and the provisions of other pieces of legislation. One that comes to mind is Section 191 of the Labor Relations Act. Now, it's not all doom and gloom for employers. There is safeguards built into the legislation, and that safeguards is in the form of an exemption that you can apply for as an employer, and you can make an application on papers to the CCMA about your case. And also you can make an application, but whilst you're waiting for an application to be made, then now you have to, subject to approval, still pay the 20 rand an hour. You cannot now say you have made an application, now I'm not paying the 20 an hour. No, you will still have to make the payments of once your application has been approved, then they will stop the payments. And also, but the final thing is that the application that you've made, let's say it's approved, it's only valid for 12 months. And then after, you will have to make a new application for another exemption. But now remember this thing about the application, you're going to have to provide now comprehensive bank statements to the CCMA or the Department of Labor, showing that you can't pay this 20 rand an hour. And then if that you can prove it, then I don't think you'll have a problem. The CCMA will take over the role from the Department of Labor relating to all statutory money claims. Now, what that means is that all underpayments that has been done in the past, or you were complaining maybe about leave pay or notice pay, anything that's got to do with money, the Department of Labor had exclusive jurisdiction over those cases. Now, currently, you have a choice as to what place you want to go to. You can either go to the Department of Labor for your claim, or you can go to the CCMA. There's two bodies now that have jurisdiction over this case. Now, the Basic Condition of Employment Act, the Department of Labor had exclusive jurisdiction, and then when it comes to the Labor Relations Act, the CCMA had exclusive jurisdiction. Now, currently, the CCMA has jurisdiction over both pieces of legislation, and that includes also the National Minimum Wage Act. The CCMA has concurrent jurisdiction with the National Minimum Wage, together with the Department of Labor, when it comes to this. And now I want to talk about the punitive measures that can come into effect for employees who does not comply with this act. This act may impose on an employer who pays the employee less than the national minimum wage an amount that is the greater of twice the value of the underpayment, twice the employee's monthly wages. I think that's a bit hectic. And it will increase into 3 times the value if the employer becomes a repeat offender. I think this is really punitive on the employer, so I would suggest just to keep in line with this act. Now, you may not always be close to a Department of Labor office or close to a CCMA office, but at least you've learned a lot from this video. In order for you to challenge your employer by telling him what your rights are, and maybe he will be able to engage you and resolve the matter without you even having to go to all these bodies. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for the latest updates that we will have in future. Thank you very much.